Thanks, guys. Hi, Mike Hofmackel. I'm going to show you a little bit of Drush today. This is beyond the basics. I recently started at ISU, and I'm working with John Van Dyke. We have a we're not part of the primary university ITS, but we've conglomerate of 4 different departments. So we have a web group, and I'm leading that. And I arrived to 75 websites that all of a sudden were mine. So I quickly was like, how am I going to manage and maintain all of this? So I started writing not only that, but they're across 5 servers. We also have testing environment. There's another server, and then I got my local box. There's another server. So I look to Drush site aliases. So who's used site aliases before? Great. So I'm going to show you what I did with site aliases, and then also how I wrote just some short bash script to help me do things that normally take me longer to do. So let's do the fun thing first, and then I'll just run it, and then I'll show you then how it works. Okay, so we'll do here's this thing. This is a testing server. This is a site that we're currently working on. Okay, it hasn't been launched. It's sitting on the test server, and we'll pretend that I've been away on vacation, and I'm going to arrive back to some other developers. Hey guys, I'm going to arrive back. I'm going to arrive back, and they've done some work, and I need to catch up. So I need to get to where they are, right? So I need to have an Svn Check Out. I need to have, the code base. I mean the database dump. I should probably get the user files, and I need a whole environment, right? So I'd like to have that quickly, and I'd like it to match what's there, because that's the active database. That's basically the database we're going to own moving forward. Okay. So very purposely, then I'll go and let's get rid of me running it in my room to make sure it works. And I'll move this to the trash here. So I've got a local box, and now this doesn't work anymore. So this is where I want to put it. I'm just going to put it under subdirectory plant path. Okay. So I maintain a group of site aliases, Drush site aliases, and we keep them in an Svn repository. So my .drush directory is actually an Svn Check Out, and I maintain that for all of us. And then that is pushed out to all the servers using Puppet. So the site aliases that I have on my box are everywhere, and Drush is everywhere. Okay. So for instance, then I have aliases such that now I could say Drush at PLPM is my short for plant path. And then I'm going to describe an environment. So we're going to say it's on preview. So do you guys work like this? Or do you specifically say Drush at something and then write a code? So I'll talk about that, about describing a site and then an environment too. Okay, so what I'm saying there is the site that's PLPM, and on the server, on the environment, that's preview. Okay, and just give me the status of that, just to show that Drush is working. It's not. This is like the hardest part about our jobs, right? Yeah, right? My wife, she writes in English lots of documents. She skips a comma. It's no big deal. You just keep reading. We forget a semicolon, the whole application breaks. Okay? So I get a nice return. Okay? But what's cool here about this is if I go and drop this preview off, I've got lots of environments defined. So now it's going to go to preview, it's going to go to live, and it's going to go to local. Right? So there's all my options. Okay? Yeah, go get them all. Okay, so now it reports one after another, and it tells me what they are. Here's preview at the bottom. Here's live. local's not up because I showed you I broke it. Okay. So you can kind of see how it's working. So now let's get to the fun part. What I want to do is take this thing that's on preview, somebody else is building, there's an Svn Check Out of it, there's a database, there's user files, I want it now, and I don't want to have to like do a dump and do all these things. So I wrote some, yeah. The database is on a server, happens to be called preview, okay, and I want to bring it local, I want it on my box. So I'm going to just run a little script here that says preview, I call it preview underscore local dot sh. Okay, I am sitting inside of Drush. This is also in my Drush script, in my Drush .drush checkout. So inside of .drush, I made a directory called scripts, and I'm writing some scripts. So those scripts are everywhere too. So I'm going to just run this little preview to local. So anything on preview, I'm going to bring to local. And it's going to ask me a few questions here. It's like, what's the repo? Because what are you talking about? Okay. The repo happens to be PLPM. Inside of there, we have some directories. So which directory inside of there? And I went plant path. So this will work for any of them, any site, right? Because now it's asking me a few questions. And now it wants to know the alias. And I'm working on getting standardized between the repo name and the alias, so I don't have to ask that all the time, but we're not quite there yet. So I'm still asking as I'm getting them standardized. Okay, so now what's happening? Now I'm doing an Svn Check Out, okay? And it's checking out all the code and bringing it local. And it's putting it in the right place. And it knows how to put it in the right place because I'm leveraging environment variables on my local box in my Drush scripts so that others can do that. Now we've finished, and now what it's trying to do is a site install so that it can make the settings files and it can make the files directory, so I have a real site now. Once it finishes here and it's built out, basically it has a blank database. Now I say, go get me the real database, and I blow that database away, and now I'm getting the real database, and it's bringing that to me. It's saying don't put passwords in the command line interface, but I did it anyway. So hopefully here comes my database. Great. Now it's going through and bringing all the user files, and it's bringing those to me, and then these successes are, because it's my local box, we're also bringing a few extra things. I asked it to go get coder module, go get devel, go get security review, go get a few other modules. Because it's my local, I want to be different. I want those available immediately to me. So yes, I got exactly what's on preview, but I added those tools that I need. I enabled them. I did Drush ULI, and you see I landed on a browser window, logged in as root, here on my local box. So one line of code, get all that, and I'm ready to go. Okay, so let's figure out how that works. Okay, so if you're doing site aliases, you understand that you're going to need access to the server SSH. Okay, so I'm going to kind of skip over that. You don't need me to do that. We do everything key-based without passwords. That's the way I don't have to type all that. So let's look at the aliases. Let me just show you this thing I just drew in my room. Okay, so I'm doing an inheritance inside of my site aliases. So I describe a site-specific alias, and I kind of got a nod from Mary here about, like, she describes one site, and she just describes that, and you maybe even describe it in your Drush RC. But I make a separate file for each site. So I've got 75 files. And then whatever the name of that file is, so it's plpm.aliases.drushrc.php describes the site. And now inside of there, any aliases that I describe will be the suffix on the end, and those are environments, so I can put a dot and whatever. If I don't put the dot, then it means everything, all of them. Okay? So now I describe my live environment, my preview environment, and my local environment. Let's look at those. We'll come back to this and why all the arrows in a second. So here is PLPM, and here I'm describing the live environment. I'm saying there's inheritance. There's inheritance based on what the PLP server is. So we'll go look at that in a second. here's where the root of that is, and here's where the URI is. If there's any other information that's specific to the site in the live environment, I can put it here. But if it's specific to the server and what it means to be that server, I'm going to do it under this PLP server that we'll look at in a second. So I'm separating out the idea of site and server and type of server and using inheritance through that. Okay, so here's my preview one, and here's my local one. Here's how I know where to get where's my web root and where's my URI, because I have some entries in my bash script that just describe those, and I have that written in the README of the script that I ran that says these are some assumptions you need to take care of, and that way when my other teammates need to run this, they just set up their environment, variables, and it'll work for them, and they don't have to have it in the same place as me. Okay, so there's PLPM. Let's look at this drawing again. Right, so we saw that the live environment has inheritance from the server. So let's look at that server. So here I've got, see here's PLPM aliases drush.php up here. And so it's this PLPM, that just the name of the file that starts to define that. So then here's servers. And here I'm describing all the servers that I have. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't bother to put my local on here. I'm debating whether to do that or not. I wouldn't want to put my local, but I might want to describe what a local is. These are actual servers, and notice they have inheritance. So this is inheritance to defaults.prod, what it means to be a prod server, and we'll look at that next. Okay, and again, these are all prod servers basically, and they behave like prod servers, so they get that prod inheritance. So there's not much in here other than remote host, but what it saves me from having to do is write that again and again and again in all 75 of those files, and if ever one of those servers moves, I got one place to change it. I just go change it here. Again, here's the site aliases, right? So now we've described a site, what it means to be a specific server, and inheriting that. And now we saw this server is inheriting what it means to be prod, so I'll show you my defaults now. So now I have one called defaults aliases. So here's prod, and all I'm describing is where the dump file is, where to stick dump files on that server, and where to put where the user files are. We could put anything else that we wanted specifically for that. What it means to be that type of server in here. If we wanted to put anything specifically about a prod server, we would have done it in servers aliases. Okay, so this is about being a type of server. Okay, this is local dev. So we have, when you get a database, it's going to be sanitized. You know, you're going to confirm it's sanitized. You're going to drop all the cache out of the database as it comes to you. Then I'm going to enable some modules and turn them on, because I usually don't have them on prod, but I'd like them on my local, and I'm going to turn those on the fly. And then again, here's my paths. And then I have an interesting one there at the end, because this is what it means to, local dev is what it means to be a local dev, but that's not a specific local dev. So then I described Hoff, and that's what it means to be me, and that has inheritance to that local dev. So if I need to do anything that's specific for my box that I want specifically for me, I can slide it in here. So it's kind of a stubbed out placeholder. Okay, so let's look at the drawing one more time, and then we'll look at that script. Okay, so describe your site, describe the server, describe the defaults. This is a one-time thing. I kind of have the defaults. I do maintain it, right? This is a one-time thing. Servers don't come online very often. But every time I get a new site, the first thing I do is I go make a Drush alias for it before I do anything. Okay. Okay, so we just ran a really simple bash script that went to preview, pulled from preview, and pulled from the SVN repo, pulled the dump, pulled the files, assembled it all, brought some extra modules that I want because it's local, and then logged me in as root. So here's that. script that did that. There's a lot of commenting out here, so let me read through. This is just what the assumptions are, telling you, hey, you want to put this in your bash RC file, and you need to know where your web root is, and I'm giving you my examples, right? So first question, repo, we saw that. Second question is like the directory inside the repo. And then site alias. And again, I'm trying to standardize this, but that hasn't been standardized with inside of our group yet, so I could just ask one question if they were all, like the repo was the same as the alias, so we're working on that. And then down here is where I start. So this is Svn Check Out. You could do git checkout, right? And here's my Svn user, which is for me. This is in my bash RC. This is a environment variable just for me, so everybody will set this up on theirs. Somebody else will have different creds. We have our Svn, we know where that is, so I just hard-coded that in. Svn, here's the repo directory, here's the web root with that repo directory on the end. I'm standardizing on that. Okay, so there comes my checkout. Here comes Drush, the alias that I told it, .local SI site install, so it's going to do a site install for me. It's going to do a standard. I really don't care. All I'm trying to do is get the settings file, the settings.php and the files directory set up. And this just seemed like the easiest way for me to do it, just do a site install. Plus, if I run into any problems at that point, it's going to tell me a lot about my server's just not ready even to handle simple site install. SQL sync, right? Got some yes, so that it doesn't keep asking me questions. And then this is an interesting one. So the rsync, this is syncing from preview. I'm going to bring the files to local, where those files are. But rsync, when you do this, it doesn't have this nice little like answer why for it, so you can't, because I guess guys at Drush think it's more destructive than blowing away your database to blow away your user files. So there's no option for why there. So I just put a while true do echo y done in front of it, and I pipe that in. So it just keeps saying yes, 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 yes at it until it stops. All right, so I took care of that little problem. And then I'm going to download security review, download devel, download hack, download diff, and devel themer, because it's coming local, because this script is specifically for about bringing from preview to local. So I want those things, because usually I've inherited quite a few sites that I know nothing about, and they've all been hacked. So that's the first thing I want to do is check and see where and start to unhack them. And then I turn on review and hacked, because I know I'm going to be using them. And then ULI. And now ULI's got nice. I'm on 5.9, so then it just opens. So let's just run that one more time. And I'll go blow some things away here, so that if I don't take it away, it won't matter. So it'll just, the Svn Check Out isn't so interesting, because it just says, I'm already there. I move on. But let's just see it run full. Move to trash. Also, database doesn't matter. I like this tool, SQL Pro. Okay, so simple one-liner. Ask me where the repo is, so I have to know that. I have to know where in the repo, because we have directory structures inside. Every site is there's some directories that inside there. We don't just pull the whole repo. And then PLPM, I've at least gotten this site standardized on those two things. So again, Svn Check Out, pulling all the files, bringing them to me. And then after that, it's going to write this. It's going to start the site install, and it's going to install the site. It's making the settings file and now it's installing the database, basically, enabling all the modules. And then as soon as I get that nice new database, I immediately blow it away with an SQL sync with the real database that I want. Then I go get the user files. And then I bring my devel and hacked and those few extra things I want. We'll see those get installed. There was my user files. Now here comes my extra downloads that I want specifically for my local. There was some error at the end, but we still got there. Okay, so this is great, right? You know, a minute ago I didn't have this thing, and now I do, and it's a tool I can use anytime I want because we stage stuff on preview, and I can bring it. You know, I've got one that is for prod, make prod, and bring it me when I start my installs, and so I'm working on building up these scripts so that we can use them. There's definitely a lot of work that I need to do. They're kind of rudimentary still, but you can see where I'm headed and how Drush with just like 4 or 5 lines, this is a really powerful tool to use. So that's really the gist of it that I have today, and it's mostly about this this inheritance and getting that straightened out. So here's all my this is the list of all my aliases. So I've got tons and tons of aliases, and I'm building them out as I work.
Publish your bash script.
So the bash script, I definitely am interested in publishing things, and there's a few things that we're thinking about. Like the bash script is simple. Like, I mean, you can have that. That's no big deal. I'd like to make it even more generic. If I could get to the point where I'm not asking you any questions. The one thing I'd love to do is, well, I've got the alias. I can go to the directory space, which means I could do an Svn check and see where the remote is, so I don't have to ask you where that remote is. Right? Because I can get all the way to that directory space that's on preview, I could just get inside there and do an Svn command and say, hey, where's your mothership? And then I don't have to ask the question. So those are the kinds of things that I want to get to the point where if I could almost ask you nothing. I mean, we can see where also, like, I give you the alias and we imply local. Well, I could skip that and you could give me the alias and be more explicit, not even local. You could say anything. This script could be bring something from somewhere to somewhere else. All right? Right? It wouldn't take me too much to do that. Instead of just hard-coding local and hard-coding preview in there, we just let you write that in there in the aliases. I'm a little nervous about doing that because I don't want to break things right now. So, and I want other people to use this, and so having a script that is available to a junior who can just read, okay, I want to run the preview to local script. It's really logical for them, and it's hard-coded so they won't break it. All right, this requires a lot of access, right? Requires a lot of access. Basically, I get all the keys, right? So then the idea is, well, if you don't want to give away all the keys, then you start to put this behind some sort of tool that allows them to just push a button which launches this script, and then the keys are done separately, right? So something like Jenkins where it can launch, command on a push of a button, right? So they have to log into Jenkins, they push the button, this thing happens, right? And then that way they don't necessarily have to have the personal access, they just need to be able to get in Jenkins and be allowed to run that script. So you can kind of start to lock that down a little bit more.
Explain about the checkout procedure. How does the information get there in the first place?
So for the
repository,
so somebody's actively building the site in the first place, right? So it's not like I made a site out of nothing, right? I'm saying there's a site over there and I want to bring it here, right? So I go there to find it. I do an Svn Check Out. You could do like a file sync from preview, but I want to make sure that I got what's checked in, not what somebody else hacked up there.
why do you do an export in Svn Check
A checkout of what? Of what? Export of what?
Export from SVN, because doesn't a checkout
Gives me all the tags.
gives you all the dot files?
Yeah, which is great, because now when I have it local and I start to work on this thing, I can check those back in.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Now, that would be great if I was doing a deployment and I was hitting the prod and I didn't want those to get there. But personally, I'm not really worried about those getting there because they're dot files and it shouldn't be served anyway. But, you know, you could keep them from getting there. But for me, I want them, right? They're coming towards, anything coming towards me, I want that.
How well does this scale in terms of large databases with large?
Well, it scales a lot better than doing PHP MyAdmin dumps. Right? We all have run into that where you get so far and you time out and then you got to change some settings and you do some sleuthing on Google and you figure you can do a bigger dump and eventually it gets too big. Where this is really doing a MySQL dump right on the server, so and then that file's brought to you. So this is as scalable as you can get, in my opinion. Yeah, everything's through SSH. Yeah, I'm VPN'd in right now, so I'm in-house. Yeah, you can't do this. If I took and turned off VPN, this would all go away. Oh, yeah, I mean, bringing files from a long distance, if you had a lot of remote people and that sort of thing, I don't really see that as too big of a problem. I need it anyway. You know, with what's going to be huge? I mean, Drupal databases tend to be pretty small. They really shouldn't get big. If they're getting big, then you gotta. I mean, the biggest ones I've seen are, you know, a gig or more, but that's really pushing it. I've seen them get up really high when they're under attack and they're trying to keep up, but that usually then reduces back down as the database cleans up. So it's really those user files that are big, but I want them all. And this is a throwaway, right? So I bring them all to me, and I don't care about preserving this thing because I'm just going to run it again next time I go.
So if you have a large site with a large amount of files, I mean, do you have a case where you've done this engagement on that tape?
No, I haven't timed like how many megabytes per. Yes. Yes. So this is coming from Iowa State to here over VPN to my local box, and they got a good number of files. I mean, it's a good sized site, but I wouldn't say it's pushing the boundaries. I've definitely seen. I mean, sites that have been used a lot, you might have to adjust and say I'm only going to bring certain files, right? So your file sync, which is happening here on this echo line, you know, you can. I know there's some options in there that you can do, and I am specifically saying bring me the whole files directory. You could say bring me a subset of that if you wanted. Multi-sites. Multi-sites, you know, I did that. I went around that, right? So here's the lesson you learn is you build a multi-site and the idea is, well, I got only one code base to take care of until you go to update. And now all of a sudden I'm patching Drupal against 10 sites simultaneously, right? That gets a little precarious. And that's what I don't like about multi-site, because disk space is cheap. I'll just clone it. And if you want to carry a common code base, do it in your repo and then just deploy 10 times. I find that to be a lot more reasonable and easier to deal with. So I don't do multi-site. I used to. I don't do it. Can you do it? Yeah, absolutely. There's all the options inside of Drush to deal with multi-site. I think it could. I don't see anything that would be in my way. fun to just watch it go by. So this time I didn't get rid of the database, so when it does when it does the sync, rsync, it should be able to kind of skip over that and say I've already done it. So that kind of handles your problem, right? So the first time you get the site, you got all the files. Don't blow it away. You go to sync. It's rsync, so you only get what you get. There's a command in rsync so here. So it depends on how you want to run it. So there's options that you can do. On rsync, you can do -mode, and you can tell it how to do it. I think the default is blow everything away, and then bring it, which I kind of like. But you can change the modes of rsync if you want. So you could say do it as an archive, do it as an incremental, so however you want to bring those to you, right? So if you have something big, you bring it to yourself once, or you bring a portion, or whatever. Yes, on tarball, anything. Everything's SSH tunneled and standard commands, rsync, and yeah, I mean, we're going from this university to the other one. There's a pretty fat pipe from here to there. So there is that. So the only part that would be slow under there that would be of concern is what we've already brought up, which is the files directory. So leave that one off and just bring what you need. Run that as a separate command. Or slip it into your local alias for you and say, drop these tables, or don't bring these directories that you know to be very large. And you can put that in your alias file, right? So let's look at my this local one. So there's a lot you can do. I'm already sanitizing the database as it's coming at me, and I'm not bringing any of the cache. So I'm blowing the cache out of the database before I dump it. So you can do that sort of thing. So again, this is defining what it means to be a local box. So anything I would like. Anytime anybody would bring something to themselves, I'd put it here. So I think, I'm not really doing anything spectacular, but I'm just putting it together. And the inheritance really helps it to be more maintainable. And the scripts are short, but really easy. It didn't take me too long to write them. It took me longer to write all the aliases than it did to write the script. But I don't have to write them again. I just maintain them now. Anything about Drush, about inheritance, about aliases, about dinner?
What do you do when Drush doesn't work? I mean, for example, XAMP, using XAMP and trying to use Drush. Drush says that my INI files are someplace else. Drush is neat when it works, but there are a lot of things that don't work. So do you have a resource?
So Andy's team they were talking about how they use Vagrant and how that really solves a lot of the problems because they bring the box to them, right? And it's pre-built. So that's kind of a way to go. Using something like XAMP or MAMP or something, you're going to find that it's limited. It is not a fully baked server, and it's definitely not secure, and you're not going to learn a whole lot about how those things work. That's the point. You just kind of turn it on and run it, right? So I think that's nice for like a sneak peek when you just want a fast server, but for my local development box, this box, everything's installed locally and run locally. And that way things are stable, and my Drush doesn't break, except for when I tried to do Drush 6 RC, and then my script stopped working, so then I rolled back to 5.9 because it's in RC. It didn't like the Drush 6 is pretty cool. So some of the things that we're thinking about forward are being able to pipe data out. So if anybody went to John's talk for Sensu. I mean, that's really where we're going to tie, right? So Puppet and Puppet is deploying the servers and keeping them homogeneous in a way, and then Sensu's the reporting system, the messaging system, and John just published a module for Drupal to report to Sensu, so to pipe the logs directly to Sensu. So we can have a Sensu dashboard coming from 75 websites all back to one location. Right? So we'll have a place to go and say, here's everything, right? And yeah, are we building Eiger again? Kind of, but how fast did we do that? Really easily, right? And the cost of ownership of Eiger is a lot compared to, we use a lot more standard tools. This messaging system that John's using, we can pipe anything into it. It's not Drupal specific. And we'll pipe everything over it, right? From all those servers, all the information, all into one place. So I think the instability that you're seeing might come from your approach more than like Drush being unstable. So I would try to take a more solid approach to building a local web server, whether that be virtualizing it and running a virtual machine or doing what I do, which is I install in place. I really like that because it gives me a direct connection to my server. Everything is on board. It's going to make debugging easier. Once Drush is installed, I don't really experience those kind of problems. Now Windows, that's another game. Yeah. I'm building it right now, so I'm kind of the only one working. John Van Dyke is starting to dip into it, but he's been working on the infrastructure side, and we're starting to meet. So I was starting to build out the Drupal and application management. John's working on this system infrastructure and how that's managed through Puppet and others. And now we're just starting to meet, and others are going to be using it. They haven't yet. So one of our biggest challenges right now is what you're about to ask, which is what do I do with the people on Windows, which is what I asked in your talk. So you're throwing my question back at me. And so good for you at this late hour. And so what I think needs Windows, Drush is never going to work on Windows. It just doesn't make sense. And they're trying, and it kind of works, but you'll find that it doesn't. And ultimately, so either you got to get them off Windows, or you virtualize it and they jump into a virtual box and use Drush there, or what we're trying to do is bring it down a level to make it even easier and an easier entry point, because some of the people we work with don't need to know all of this stuff. They just need to go to preview to local script and run that, so they get it. Right? That's why I'm building it, so they can run it. And how do they run Drush? We're thinking, okay, they've got a virtual machine that we're going to load and they don't even really pay attention to. And then we're going to wrap, some sort of, I think John has a better sense of this, but, basically allow them to run Drush from their local Windows box, but basically piping that over to the virtual box, and that's doing the work, right? On board on their box, right? So we'd hand them a virtual machine, pre-built. They don't even give them root because they don't need it. Install, and then they have this wrapper around their shell such that everything they try to do Drush gets piped over there.
So this is something that
Yeah.
we struggle with. So it's a combination of
That's a very, very large database. I have not seen one that large, and I've worked on some big stuff. That's a big database.
and so it was getting the limitation, but it actually hit that time limit for us to get it stood up. And wow. And so you guys
Oh, and I can sit on a plane and do it.
Right. But you have a Aliases chapter, actually some 8 meg download, right? So what's cutting you just putting all of that virtual stuff in your environment?
We can make a virtual environment and say everybody has to work in there.
Yeah.
And we do, right? So we're working on building that, and that's where everybody collides, is the way I see it. I don't want to give every single developer their own virtual development,
Well, why not?
because I don't need to.
Structure it where you know that it's going to get blown away every day, and it's going to Friday get blown away, so you have to get all your stuff.
Okay, so that's great for you got to realize that not everybody who's working on Drupal is at that level where they can handle that kind of experience, right? There are people who have installed Drupal that don't know what PHP is, that can configure modules, that can get things going, that can deal with users and use the user interface, and we want them to be able to do that. So the idea that I'm going to take somebody who can provide some value to us at that level, but having them thrust into the idea of, okay, you're going to learn SVN and you're going to learn, Drush and all these other commands, is, I think, I don't know. I think it's pushing the boundaries for some people that we see value in, where I think that might be the difference between our teams. Because I can get an intern to do that, right? Yeah.
I guess this is a question I have is, you're going to go through the effort of putting a virtual box on a Windows machine and making it so that the user doesn't necessarily is aware of it or doesn't manage it. Then it seems to me, again, theoretically,
Yeah.
why not take a virtual box and get such a fast connection, put it on an environment that you manage centrally, and just say, just point there. It's almost, you have such a fast connection. You can't work on it on a plane. Right?
Okay, so you broke it. You just answered my question. I can't work on a plane.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
I want to be able to do that. I will, it's everything in the cloud isn't always the solution. I think that the next step, though, is like my change is we definitely are going to virtualize the next tier where all the developers come together and they all slam together at the first dev environment, is what I would call that, where that's the first time all the code meets, coming from all the places, and you break each other's stuff and you figure it out. That's all virtualized. The next level up of testing, that's virtualized. Prod, virtualized. And you're just saying, why don't you just virtualize locally? Well, it's a viable solution. I think that it works. Why don't I do it? I personally like doing this. I've been doing it this way for years, and all of a sudden you're going to come in and change my process, and that's hard, right? I'm going to resist you. Now, if you were my boss, you'd just say tough luck, right? And that'd be fair, because that's just the way it goes, right? But I don't know. It doesn't. I don't see myself slowing down. I don't see myself having to rebuild my box again. The worry that my box isn't like prod is not so much of a concern for me, because I'm working at a level where I maintain my own box, and I know a lot more about Apache because I do that. I know a lot about how it operates and how it breaks and how it doesn't, and I know how to fix it now because I maintain my own. Where if you just offload all of that and somebody else is going to do it, then how do your dev ops meet? Because the devs never learn ops, right? And you sit in a room and you try to talk to each other, but you don't know each other's stuff. You have to learn a little bit about what the other person's doing, and how am I going to do that? I don't know. Maybe I'm fighting hard for something I don't. But you all have to find your own path, and everybody's path is what it is, and fight for efficiency. That's what you're saying. Fight for efficiency, and I'm all for that. Yep. Yeah.
actually, your local environment.
Yeah. 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 Scaling's hard, like scaling teams and getting bigger and staying connected and that's hard. And sometimes you have to standardize. That's because Ann's doesn't have hers out. You started talking about Windows and she put it away. Yeah. 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 Okay. Great. Thanks.